Welcome to Selling Circular, the podcast dedicated to exploring the innovative minds and business models shaping our circular economy. I'm Sabira Lakhani, VP of Product at SpareTech.
I'm Garr Punnett, CEO of LoopLayer. Today, we're diving into one of the most significant regulatory shifts to hit the packaging industry in about 3 decades. It's the UK's extended producer responsibility legislation that just went into effect this past year, 2025, for future podcast listeners. It's a fun one.
I wasn't there for this episode, so you won't hear my voice, but this seismic shift, we're talking about it with Emily Rogers, the founder of Reath, which is a UK-based software company helping businesses navigate these new regulatory changes/regulations while advancing reusable packaging systems.
Well, what I love about this too is really I should give a warning maybe. So if anybody is like, I really like Sabira's input and I don't just want to hear Garr, then yeah, you can skip this one. But I think we actually really get into it. And what I love about Emily's story in this is really how they started. So they launched an open, actually, Sabira, yes, this is the best part. They launched an open data standard for reusable packaging, essentially trying to create that common language for the industry. And as Emily puts it, they were basically in the country, as this legislation was coming out, they're sort of feeling like they're walking around a room without the lights on and everyone's stubbing their toes. But Reath had that flashlight and they had that vision for what they maybe could do with software solution.
And that flashlight has illuminated some fascinating insights. I didn't know this, but did you know that Japan has reusable packaging schemes and they achieve a 99% return rate? I feel like I knew Japan was doing well overall, but I didn't know it was that good, which is pretty amazing. And in the UK and the US, of course, we are nowhere near close. We don't really even have reusable packaging schemes.
We're just almost not even playing the same game.
No, we're not. No.
Yeah. And so speaking of that, it's just absolutely staggering. And so as we talk about some of the numbers, this is what I think Sabira I so tracked with, which is some of the companies are now going to see their tax bills jump from £10 million to about £90 million in a single year.
Yeah.
9x in a single year because of this legislation, and people are kind of freaking out.
Which makes sense to me. I mean, I'm sorry that that's going to be a big business cost, but the government is shifting, covering 90% of the end of life costs to covering 0%. We're shifting the responsibility. That's what extended producer responsibility means, right? So now businesses have to take the accountability for that. And this is where it gets interesting. The fees vary dramatically by material, which also makes sense. I'm glad that's the case. But if you switch to reusable packaging, then you only pay that fee once, and then you're using it 40 to 50 times over the life of it instead of over and over again for single-use packaging.
So if you're into packaging, or if you're trying to better understand these regulations, or an entrepreneur looking again to build in this circular economy space, really, this is another great conversation that's going to get you those insights that maybe you'll just get that next step forward and try to figure out this next option of what we can do to keep making sure that we're moving in the right direction. This is essential. I love it. Let's jump in with Emily. I have a question about reuse ID. And so I would love to best understand. I love that you all sort of started publishing this sort of open data standard. And that's a great playbook for getting attention and to setting a standard and trying to galvanize almost an industry / certain participants or actors in the ecosystem. Why'd you choose to do that? I love when people come out with that, and it's something I'm looking into and others have looked into. And I would love to know why you did it and then what you learned from that.
Great question. It feels like ages ago, but we started the company in 2019 and we're kind of fully getting into the swing of things in 2020 when the world became less of a known entity.
Yeah.
So we actually had applied for UK government grant funding through the Innovate UK body. And in that, they want assurances. It's a high risk fund for early stage projects. So they want assurances that they're going to get something out of this project that will live beyond you if you're not successful.
The public benefit, I'm sure.
Yeah, the public benefit. Exactly.
Yeah.
And so we had no idea what was going to happen with the company. And we were really focused on data and the lack of data around packaging. And we didn't want the circular economy to suffer the way that recycling has suffered, where
Mm.
literally down to your zip code, it will change on what you can and cannot recycle and who can keep up with that. Literally no one. So when it came to reusable packaging or circular recycling systems, we really wanted to have clear categories of data that lots of people agreed added value in some way, whether that be the actual health and safety around the packaging usage or the environmental impact or the cost. We tried to cover a variety of things and then ended up partnering with the Open Data Institute, which was a pretty
Hmm.
cool geek moment for us, and Microsoft. And that's how we kind of turned it into the standard. And our technology partner at the time, Happy Porch, they're a group of remote developers and they're really focused on circular economy systems specifically. And that was kind of the first way that we got to work together as well. So it was this great cohort of a lot of minds coming together to try to figure out how do we put this thing out there? And for us, it is something that lives beyond us. But it was a
Hmm.
real way for us to establish ourselves as leaders in a relatively fledgling, unknown space. Um, it felt like at that point, especially, everyone was like, circular economy. I'm walking around a room and all the lights are off and I keep stubbing my toe.
Yeah.
But we had the
I
flashlight.
feel like there's only one light on still, but yeah.
Yes, yes. I think we've gone from the
But the light's
flashlight to
on.
maybe one light in a corner.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
exactly.
Yep.
It's partially illuminated. So that's why we did it. And then I guess since then, it's really evolved. So we've seen a lot of other organizations use our standard in their own software or as a basis for kind of national regulations.
Hmm.
So we don't charge for it. It's open for a reason. So it's been really cool to see how it's just kind of organically grown by itself. I think it just gives credibility to say we did our homework. We're not telling you what
Yeah.
to do because we don't know what to do. We're telling you what to do because we have done all of the boring research for you.
Yes.
So
Yes.
yeah, that's a
Uh,
yeah, that was our origin story.
well, that's again, that's such a cool origin story and playbook moment to say like, hey, this is how we're
Yeah,
going to establish ourselves, establish our brand, what we care about, what we're providing to
yeah,
communities or to the public. Now I'm curious. Again, it's been some years now. You're 5 years removed from that
yeah.
ish, and how does having that sort of open standard playbook, um, how do you start to, I mean, really define yourself out of that? Like, how does that play into the brand now of Reath,
Mm.
where you have this entity that people go, oh yeah, this, and you're like, yes, but also
But
we do these other things as well, and these are for profit. And I'm always curious about those transitions in that conversation.
yeah, so the open data standard was a really helpful calling card when we were first
Yes.
starting out. It was a really
Yep.
great way to get brands that we had no business talking to on a call. Um,
Love that.
and then honestly, we're very research focused. So we're very product research and market research focused. So we were using those calls to gather more data about what
Mm.
if we monetized something, some element of the product, what would be most valuable? What format would it need to be in? So we've transitioned out of talking about it regularly now. We've
Yeah,
kind of been
that's
able to
fair.
grow beyond it, and we're able to get the cold conversations just based on what the research has given us. But I think it's also part of it is it goes back to the credibility, right? Like we're well known for our accuracy and for being very up on compliance and regulatory obligations, and that all goes back to that original piece of work. So I think it's helped us build that reputation because a lot of the stuff that we do now, companies pay taxes on the work that we do for them. So if it's not accurate, they
They'll
could
let you
get
know.
fined. Yeah,
Well,
exactly.
yeah.
So the transition, I guess it gave us the opportunity to do a lot of that research to understand what would then create like a monetizable product. and now we can just lead with that monetizable product, but we can
That's right.
sneak it in if anyone wants to know kind of, "Who are you? Why are you doing this?"
No, that's excellent, and I think it's something for many entrepreneurs to consider as we dig more and more into various larger industries, and then the niches within those circular sort of motions within those industries.
Yeah.
Uh, Speaking about sort of that data
Yeah.
and behavior change, coming out of that and learning more about either human behavior in that data, but then also industrial maybe behavior, the actual organizational behavior. Was there
Yeah.
anything that surprised you in really digging deep into some of that data, and then how you all have sort of learned from that? I mean, is there any big aha moments?
There have been a couple. So one of the questions we get asked a lot for reuse is, do I need to put a deposit down for this packaging if
Mm,
it's customer facing? And there actually isn't a right or a wrong answer to that. It depends on your customer base. So if you're an environmental brand, people don't care. Like, they don't care if they get a reward, they don't care if they're charged for it. They just want the service, and it doesn't really matter what you do. Whereas in other systems, you really need to motivate them either with the carrot or the stick, and they have about a
ooh,
similar effectiveness rating. The other thing is that every country is really different. So in Japan, they don't need an incentive because everyone just returns everything. Like, they have a 99% return rate across all, all of their reuse schemes.
wow,
Um,
yeah,
and in the UK, it's not like that. And it never will be because we're not associating any of that data with people's personal information. It's not
hmm.
associated with their credit score or their government ID. And but that's not going to happen here. And in the US, that's also never going to happen. Uh, so that was one big aha moment for the customer facing schemes, is that it really depends on who your customers are and why they're shopping with you in the first place. Um, the interesting one for business to business reuse systems, so like transportation packaging, for
Hmm.
example, it increased workers' happiness and workers' satisfaction, because I mean, I felt this is a just a person existing, but it's frustrating when you're like, "I just made all of that trash."
So
Like,
this is purpose. This is people going, oh, look at what I've accomplished or help the team accomplish.
yeah, it's like, "Oh, I'm not throwing out 2,000 boxes
Ooh.
every week anymore. I am reusing these, I'm taking care of them, we own them, they're an asset." And now, even though I'm in a warehouse job that maybe doesn't give me as much mental stimulation as I want, it is giving me, like a sense of fulfillment that if I do this correctly, we'll have halved our waste for the year. And it's something that's, like, really physical and tangible. So that was something that we were completely not expecting, but the actual people implementing the systems were really engaged, whereas I think a lot of leadership initially thought, "Oh, process change, people are gonna hate this." But no, they were like, "We don't have to throw all this stuff out." This is
That's
great.
I love that. And so how does that change in this we're just gonna again, we always just bounce in between these great
Go
thoughts.
for it.
And so thank you for going on this journey. Because I part another part of this question actually then is in that learning of that behavior change, the happiness effect of employees, that's just
Yeah.
another data point that affects what you're then actually selling and how you can sell it to whichever stakeholder. As
Yeah.
soon as you brought that up, that immediately for me was like, oh, well, that's a different audience. It's somebody in a company cares about that metric,
Yes.
or that data point. So really, I mean, I think what I'd be really curious about is like how have you evolved that value proposition over time? And then part two of that, how do you modify that when you're talking to a CFO versus like
Mm,
a chief sustainability officer who might, the CFO is going to care about the numbers.
yes, they
The
do.
chief sustainability officer is going to care about the numbers, but weight a certain amount of that social value as well into that consideration. How have you sort of evolved
Yeah.
that? And then how do you adjust that even in today of when you're going through the sales process?
That's a good question. We're pretty process driven, so we're pretty
Yeah.
methodical in how we approach different stages of conversations.
Love it.
Um, and we're very data driven. So we try to bring statistics to every person, and then we just ask them on the call usually, what matters to you? Like, what are you
Yeah.
trying to do right now? Um, is there anything that has been tripping you up, or anything you feel like you just have no idea what you're doing, or anything that scares you, essentially? Because a lot of people have imposter syndrome, especially when
Mm.
it comes to sustainability and carbon metrics. Like, but I don't know what I'm doing. And it's like, that's okay, because we can help you get the data.
Because we're here. Yes.
Yeah. We can give you the data to show that you've made a data-based decision. Um, so we try to have stats on everything. So for example, we would bring numbers to a conversation around employee satisfaction between before we started and after a year of implementation.
Mm.
Or we'll bring a return on investment figure from either the cost of the packaging or the reduction of tax fees. And also, that's part of what we offer now is the full modeling software, so people can build the business case themselves for working with us. So yeah, we just ask. We just ask
I
what they want to know.
I mean, that's so awesome because, and it's such a lame word to use, but it's the only one I could come up with, which is, I mean, that's such a traditional sales tactic. But again, how
Mm,
applicable that is for just us to recognize in this process
yeah,
where we're all trying to figure out how to build these new systems, build in these data points, where just being clear and transparent can just really break down a barrier and be like, okay, great. You may
yeah,
not go with us as a provider. You may not do this, whatever it is, but we're here to help you in either better understanding what we can offer you or even
yeah,
help you probably better understand yourself if we can help in some sort of capacity with that. And so I
yeah.
think that's just so illuminating when it comes to, well, just we don't need to make this more complicated than it already
No,
is. Yes, yeah,
exactly. Yeah, our product manager, we're a small team. There's only four of us,
yeah.
but we do a whole lot for people are always shocked when I tell them how many people are behind the curtain. But it's basically the rule of thumb is every conversation is worthwhile if we learn something, and we're only going to learn something by listening. So she always crafts kind of on a quarterly basis, like new questions that she wants me asking when we're on conversations with new customers. But they're all always around like, what are you doing right now? You know, what's hard?
That's,
What's easy?
yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
it's it's half the point of this podcast. It's like, what are you doing? Like,
Yeah,
what's going on? What's going on in your world? Yeah. Um,
exactly.
you know, in running, I mean, what have you all found in running such a lean operation and an organization? I mean, this
Uh,
seems there's we can look at peer organizations that get the big funding, get the blow up the numbers on the employees, and then
yeah,
have to play the game then of getting more funding, and trying to break through the barriers of behavioral change at the organizational level, or at the consumer level. And when they can or
yeah.
can't do that, then they have to adjust employee numbers. And I mean, this seems like such a the future of our industry is being able to be a very lean operation so that we can continue to almost outlast
Change.
change. Yes, or the resistance to
The
change. Yeah.
resistance. Yes, exactly. The
Yeah.
lack of change. Oh gosh. So everyone that works at the company cares about the environmental impact that we have,
Hmm.
but I actually think what sticks us together is actually we care more about the work environment that we get to have. And we're all genuinely just really good friends now. I mean, we spend the most time with each other, so
Yeah.
it helps. But just honestly, the fact that I'm the boss, but everyone has essentially complete autonomy. Everyone is an expert in what they're bringing to the business. Everyone designs their own day. So that provides a lot of satisfaction. And we also make sure that everyone can rest when they need to.
Mm.
I think that's the key for avoiding burnout in a small team. So,
And in this
it's a
industry.
yes, yeah. If we have deadlines at midnight, that happens. But then it's like, and you take the next half a day off because you're gonna get fried by the end of the week. Um, and the lean sales process is really important because that sits pretty much solely with me. I'm one person. I have to look after all of our finances, all of our investors, all of our marketing. I have to wear a lot of hats during the day, and I also have a chronic illness, so I have to be really careful with my energy. So we make it as lean as possible, and that means that a lot of stuff is automated. So all the feedback that I get on calls automatically goes to the product team to review. All of the follow up is automated. It just takes a lot of the admin out of the way so that I can spend my
Yeah.
energy talking to people and actually
In learning,
and
learning.
learning about them. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Um, how do you think there's a? I mean, I don't know how much you know, maybe about maybe U.S. counterparts. But do you think
Mm,
there's more cultural acceptance to the company you're trying to build, to the ethos you're bringing to the company? Is there something different about, the UK and any other sort of societal cultural differences there on this type of company? Because I mean,
yeah,
again, I'm trying to build a super lean company on my end, but
yeah.
I feel the constant pressure to be like, should I be doing it this way?
Mm. It's interesting. So this is my third startup.
Yeah.
This
Mm,
is my first time founding, but I was at very early numbers in the other two, and I saw that inflation reduction
mm-hmm.
roller
Yeah.
coaster. And it was a hellish environment to be in. And a lot of that would come from not the leadership team. The leadership team always starts out with the best of intentions,
Yeah.
but it comes from who you take money from. So we've been so, so careful with who we've taken funding from. And I never get pressure to inflate the team or grow beyond our means. We have venture capital investors that are like, figure out profitability, you know? Like,
Mm,
we're not worried about this hockey stick curve yet. You have the people and the tech where if it's going to happen, you're going to be there first. But like, don't hire 10 more people unless you have the contracts that back
yeah.
it up.
Yeah.
So we're not encouraged to do that kind of growth here. And we don't really have many US based investors. We have a couple of angels that are
Hmm.
owner operators, so they've really lived it.
Yeah.
So I think that's also a different beast. But yeah, I'm very wary of that. And one of the things I do when we're talking about money is I try to figure out how a potential investor reacts to bad news. Um,
Oh, totally.
so, like, how do they show up on a bad day? Because that's when I need the most help. I don't
Yeah.
need them to cheer me on when it's going well.
Right. When they're on
Um,
the sidelines just doing this, it's like,
yeah.
that's great. I love that. Yeah.
But like, what happens when I'm backed into a
Yeah.
corner and I need support? So yeah, I think there's it. I don't know. People are surprised that we're so small, but I don't know what it's like to run a company in the US. I've only done it
Yeah. Yeah.
in the UK. But yeah, I feel like overall, especially when venture capital is involved, there is this like grow, grow, grow at the cost of anything. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, that doesn't sound like a great place to work.
It- yeah, I mean, I say this all the time on the pod, but it's just the reality of the unsustainable expectations placed on a sustainability company sometimes. And
It's ironic.
it's the irony is it's bizarre. Yeah. What then sort of getting back into it really quickly on the company, and
Oh,
have I want to sort of get back to the sales conversation of this.
yeah,
Because I think you mentioned being at the right place at the right time, and that investors are going to respect where it's like, no, 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 you're going to where, the classic where the puck is going. I don't know
yeah.
how common that phrase is, but I never know with culturally, but
Yep. I
uh,
make sports references all the time at my team.
yeah,
I said something
yeah,
like, "Oh, that really came in clutch," and they all looked at me like, "What?
like
Is
what?
that an
Yeah.
American thing?" And I was like, "I don't know."
I don't know. I pulled it out the depths of my Americanness. Yes, yeah,
Exactly.
yeah,
Sorry,
yeah.
keep going.
No, no, no. So I think what I'm curious about is you all uh, seem to be headed towards the right place at the right time, and so I'm curious. I would love your impressions on the timing now of the 2025 EPR legislation that came into effect in the UK,
Yeah.
and sort of where that stands, and then I'll have some more questions on how they structured it, because we have some of that legislation starting to take
Yeah.
place
7
here in the
states.
U.S.
Yep.
Yay, 7 states. Yes, exactly.
It's like,
And yeah, but it is in one of my home states, Minnesota, one of the newest additions. But I'd be curious of where you see this place now, and how you all see this with Reath. What you expect out of the next year and 10 years out of how this could
mm,
sort of shift the industry in the right direction.
it is the most significant thing to happen to the packaging industry in the last 30 years.
Mm.
Um, no, you won't get any argument there from anyone. It is uh rocking people's worlds in the
Yeah.
worst way.
Yeah, yeah.
It's meant big change for us. So the reason that we do so much listening is because we've had to adapt the product loads. Like when this business started, and this I'm not going to connect the dots because we don't have enough time. But that we were going to be like a facial massage business where you could go bring in your home care health products and refill them in
Huh.
this third space. And now we're a software company.
I think maybe we can connect some of those dots.
Yeah.
Because just for the audience, then, so let me take a stab at it. You're focusing on packaging very specifically for a use at a company. Then you're
Yes.
like, oh, that's not really going to solve the problem. We need to go actually solve this other problem to also solve this problem. And then
Yes.
now you're doing a little bit of both. Okay, great.
Yeah,
Okay, awesome.
exactly.
Yeah,
Um, so basically, we're not afraid of a pivot when it's what the market needs.
right. Yeah.
So we have our full reuse software, but to respond to the extended producer responsibility legislation, we've had to build out a whole packaging manager feature. That's
Mm.
actually now the biggest part of the business. So it lets companies upload their data. It lets them get their tax assessment so they understand their liability.
And sorry to interrupt real quickly. By
Yeah, go ahead.
name, what is that solution called?
Wait, it's just called a packaging manager?
No, totally. I just want to make that clear so people know what to look for. It can
Oh,
be called whatever.
yes.
Yeah, yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
So I know we don't have a fun name. It just does what it says on the
It
tin.
does what it says though. That's a good
Yeah.
thing. Okay, we
Yes.
don't. It doesn't need to be a ton of vowels or a
Like
ton of consonants.
compass or yeah,
Yeah,
no.
exactly. No, no.
It's a workhorse, really.
Good.
Um,
That's what it should be. Yeah.
Yeah, so because a lot of people were very concerned about their tax bill. So, for example,
Mm.
some of our big UK-based clients, they would have an annual tax bill that was like 10 million, and now the estimates that it's going to be 90 million, and that's in a year. And that is where is that money coming from? And the other challenge that the government, I don't think, has acknowledged out loud is the human resource impact of this. The
Mm.
granularity of data required to
Hmm.
understand what you have to pay is so high, and the current status of that data is so low that companies know they're submitting the wrong information, but they literally just don't have enough time to go out and
And
measure. You have hundreds of thousands of SKUs. Are you going to go out and measure and weigh all of them in a year?
well, to explain that, yeah, to explain that then to
Yeah.
the audience, I mean, I hope I'm pulling up the right fees. What you're referencing then is a various amount of items that you have that contain a various
Yes.
amount of packaging in delivering those SKUs. But I've
Yes.
got here aluminum, fiber-based composite, glass, paper and card, plastic, steel, wood. Aluminum's 266 pounds per ton.
Yep.
Fiber-based composite 461 uh,
Yeah,
pounds
they're
per ton.
expensive.
Um, yes, and so
Plastic
that
and glass are very expensive.
yeah,
Um,
plastics at 423 pounds per
yeah,
ton. And pounds here, U.S. audience,
do
we
the
can make the jump
conversion
here. Yeah, exactly. um, but I was quite surprised by those numbers.
by how
And so
expensive
now
it is. Yeah.
by how expensive. I mean, but that is. I mean, now we have to see what will that mean in creating systems that work to reclaim
Yeah.
those materials and process those materials.
Exactly. So those are the base fees, and essentially the reason it's such a big shift is because traditionally in the UK, any producers or retailers were only responsible for 10% of the cost of the end of life of the packaging. So the recycling facilities and managing those and paying people that work there, landfills, composting, industrial composting, incineration, that all has a cost, right? They're all their own entities. And the
Hmm.
government was footing the bill for 90% of that. And now the government's not footing the bill for any of it. It's all 100% on the businesses. So it's a 10x
Hmm.
cost increase. It's scary. And it's all about improving recycling infrastructure. So what you just read out were some of the base fees. Next year, we're going to have a new element of this called the recycling assessment methodology, which basically means each piece of your packaging is going to get a color code. It's like a stoplight. It's red, orange, or green. If it's
Whoa.
green, you're going to get a discount probably on those base fees. If it's orange,
Oh,
you're going to pay the base fee. And if it's red, you're going to pay double. So um, it is
okay.
punishing. And so we've had to
And
build a
that's in a
whole
year,
calculator that's
or
in a
the
year.
assessments in a year, and then it's going to be applied, or is it you have a
In a
year? Like how
year,
is?
you're paying those fees, those new updated
Whoa.
fees. Yeah, so last year was the grace period to start figuring out how to collect your data. This year's the first year that you have to pay, and everyone just pays the base fees. And then next year, the RAM, the recycling assessment methodology,
This
comes
is.
in to kick butt.
Well, this is the conditioning that even I need to be reconditioned. That somehow I'm going, and I love all of this, but somehow in this
Yeah,
I'm going, that's not enough time. Like
it's not.
that's they. Well, hold on, hold on. Maybe I'm wrong, and maybe you can prove me wrong on this. But I look at this and go, oh, they must have 10 to 15 years. They must have that. That's what they're allowed. I don't. Why? Why do I think that? Why do I need to give corporations more of a break on figuring out their actions when they need to maybe act more quickly? So help. So that's
Yes.
where I'm reacting. So please, where am I wrong or right in being like, no, maybe I need to adjust my thinking, and maybe a year is aggressive, but it's still great that they're moving in the right direction.
So I'm a bit of a mix there in terms of how much empathy I feel as well.
Please. Yes. Yes.
So I can see the business frustration very clearly as a business owner
Mm-hmm.
when
Mm-hmm.
you are producing 100,000 different types of products for consumers that have all of this health and safety oversight because people are consuming them. And if you don't do it the right way, they'll get sick. Um, a new type of packaging for that literally takes years to produce.
Mm.
And especially in the UK, companies have really been burned in the past by legislation. They've been told you have to use this kind of machinery and this type of material ongoing. So they invest tens of millions in changing their whole factory, their whole process. And then after it's live, after 10 years of work, it turns out actually that material is not good for us. All of that investment was worth nothing. You can't use any of it.
Yeah.
So
Well.
they've been burned. They're like, is this gonna last? Um, if I have red packaging right now, I can't change it for like 4 years. So
Yeah.
what do I do?
You're
Because
just gonna
if
be
I start
paying. Yeah.
R&D now, what do I do? And then the regulation's been changing. I mean, even 2 weeks ago, it got updated. And we ourselves have found errors in it, and we've been communicating with the government body, say, "Hey, did you notice that this contradicts this?" Um,
Ooh.
so for a business that has to plan 5 years, 10 years out, they're frustrated about. They don't feel like they've been given enough time to actually make the change because the volumes involved and the material science to make sure something is actually safe to hold your sandwich. You know, it takes
Is
time.
it does take time. I mean, but at this point too, are we tracking? I mean, are not tracking? Are we trying to compensate for the internal R&D, or is this now just also trying to compensate for the procurement process of existing solutions that are probably out there and have
There's a huge
that
element of that.
compliance?
That needs to be fast-tracked. Yeah.
Right.
Um,
Right.
there are there are limiting factors, and it depends on the type of packaging, right? Some are super easy. Like people could
Mm.
switch their secondary packaging so quickly. That's just a supply chain element to work on. Whereas consumables, you have to go through stability testing, and that takes a minimum of 6 months to basically say, I'm
Mm.
putting this into this. I need to see what happens to it. Um, and then if
Yeah.
something goes wrong, the 6-month clock starts over. So for certain categories, there are real limitations that the companies can't get around without compromising quality, which they won't do, of course, or we don't want them to do.
Don't want
Um,
them to, yeah.
but that doesn't mean the legislation should stop either. You know, I think the government is doing the best that they can. They're trying to push progress forward. And sometimes, you know, the only way that you get the progress is by making it very painful.
Yeah.
Um, and unfortunately, probably the real losers here are the consumers because unfortunately, a lot of this cost is probably going to get pushed onto the public because the company won't have other
Hmm.
ways to fund that additional tax. So
Wow.
it's not black and white. And I think the companies really want it to look black and white and the government really wants it to look black and white. But actually, there's so many types of packaging. We use so many materials in silly ways. And I think it's a good thing that they're putting something down there that we have to stick to because it forces this conversation. Um, and honestly, people have to put money where their mouth is. If it doesn't hurt them
Yeah.
financially, they're not going to do anything about it. So I'm
Hmm.
okay with the pain, but I also understand from a business point of view, you're sitting there pulling your hair out like, how do I plan for this?
Yeah, no, it's fair. I think somehow in this though too, there's, and I've been starting to write more about this and think more about just social grace and coordination, where it's
Yeah,
like over the next 20 years, it is going to be a lot of we have to do things that are binding, that maybe are a little sharp, that are maybe a little aggressive. But
we need
how
that
do we
though.
do this? We need it. And
Yeah.
how do we do it in a way too where we're all going, but we don't potentially know what we're doing. And we're
Yes.
trying to figure out together what the new paradigm is going to be so that we can leave plastics behind. We can focus on maybe more systemic challenges ahead. And
Yep.
that is challenging, and it's really challenging to have that grace and that transaction of, hey, I get you're doing this is what I'm looking for, and then come to that middle ground a little bit.
Yeah, I think there's also an element of working together here
Yeah.
that you know, private companies, I think, tend to move away from, but there's a great example. In Glasgow, they launched a reusable cup scheme that has participation from all the major coffee shops. And I think, especially with circular economy, you just can't do it alone. And you'll save so much money and time and effort if you work together. We're also seeing that with the supermarkets. So it's kind of like a new gateway to more radical collaboration. And you need the
Yes.
right partners and you need the right investments in all of the areas, but you need to not see it as, I guess, a business edge or a USP. You need to see it
Ooh.
as something you're doing together to change society. It's like take the bad options away, only leave people with the good options, and we do it
Yeah,
together.
yeah. I love that, and I thank you for pointing that out because that is the other strange, awkward part about circular economy advancing these solutions is how much
Yeah.
collaboration it will take. And then because of the amount of collaboration, we also can't then turn that into the value prop we're selling to consumers because that's going to be
No.
confusing. It's going to
Yep.
be, it won't be as much of a value add as I think brands would like for all the work that's going to have to be put in. It's just going to have to be
Huge.
table stakes. And
Yeah.
that's tricky. That's tricky to have people buy into, be like, hey, all of the stuff you're going to focus on, that's just going to be the standard. But
Mhm.
that's just how I think it's all going to iron out.
It's not gonna differentiate. It's and I think that's why I can't get too mad at the legislation because one of the ways out of these fees is reusable packaging. You only have to pay the fee once, and then you get to use the packaging 40 or 50 times.
Mm,
Like
yeah,
that's literally millions in savings for some companies, and it is a massive push to say, "Figure it out." You know, get the
right.
infrastructure in place. Whatever that's gonna cost you, it's not gonna compare to the taxes, and I think that's really what the government's trying to do. But the government's not a business, right? So we have to remember that. That's that grace period. It doesn't operate the same way, and I think there's probably healthier conversations that could happen in both directions.
Yes, between, well, and that actually speaks to, I mean, a little bit of the model that I couldn't, it seemed like the way that the UK was handling this
Mm,
through, and I'm not going to get the name right here.
that's okay.
Uh, yeah, that's, I usually have it a little bit quicker on the up poll, but it's the name of the of essentially the governance body,
Death
and
breath?
it might be, yes,
Yeah.
but it also had a Setco in there or something.
Oh, I don't
But
know.
oh no, I don't want to obfuscate here what the actual truth is. But what I
That's
was
fine.
curious about is it seemed like this system was really based on a government oversight, mixed with industry support and industry opinion. So it was like it's essentially saying, hey, this
It
new
is.
organization, yeah. So this is PAC UK, which then also
Oh, yeah, they're a
uh
consultancy body. Yeah.
oh, they're a consultancy body. So again, this is where
Yeah.
I'm trying to figure out the players in this. Um,
Mm.
but on the US end, this is where we also then have, and what I'm fascinated about is the difference of how the structures are going to play out, which is on the US end, I think we have the Circular Action Alliance or something like that called CAA, and
Yes.
that's what the 7 states that we mentioned earlier, that's what you have to essentially use them as the registration
Body.
body,
Yep.
but all of their actors, all of their stakeholders are um, currently large corporate packaging organizations and consumer products, and
Yep.
they're also staffed by the same, which is people from those companies.
Yeah.
We can maybe understand where some of this might be held in tension, and it seems
Yes.
like that is where the US goes, is they go, okay, let's build an organization you have to register, but it's all people who are going to be having the opinions of the companies they came
Industry.
from,
Yeah.
industry. And then
Mhm.
on the UK end, there's going to be probably a little bit more government involved in that administration as well.
Yes.
And so I'm really going to have keen interest in seeing how
It's
these sort
very
of play
different.
out. Yes, in these
Yeah.
discussions, because it's going to be who's starting the conversation, who owns the conversation, who's inputting in the conversation, and then who's reporting out of that
Who
conversation
actually has to deal
is
with it. Yeah.
right. Then who actually has to deal with it. And so that's where I'll be curious how these, and we can maybe follow up in a year and see, okay, this
See
is
what
maybe there's some
happens.
things
Yeah.
shaking out. Yeah, exactly. Um,
Yeah.
well, there was no real question in there, I guess, unless you had a comment or
Well,
reaction to that, some of that.
I think honestly that's the real challenge for global businesses right now is that everyone's doing something slightly different, which means more human resource being put into what data they're collecting, what format it goes in, is it right or wrong? And in Europe, there's even more legislation. So there's the PPWR regulations, which is even more intensive than the UK's version. And every country in Europe has its own additional regulations. And the consequences in Europe are much higher if you're not compliant. So you get a big fine, you lose your revenue from that product for the year, you can't trade with that product in that country, and some of them carry jail time. So it's I think if we're comparing them, we actually want to look at the US versus Europe because the UK is kind of in the middle.
Oh,
And
interesting.
Europe's
Yeah.
gone much further in that direction. And honestly, it's been more effective because if you look at France, they're able to use all this additional revenue to reinvest in this infrastructure that we're talking about and pay for it that way. Um, whereas, they're actually getting something done.
Mm,
But they're also, it's a hard market then for companies to engage with.
right.
So
And
does it
not the
put,
biggest market either. And so they might
yeah,
be willing to,
yeah, they
yeah.
might be taking trade-offs. I don't know that for a fact. But it's the first country that we get asked about when people ask us for
Oh,
our regulation advice. It's France and Germany are the first ones kind of on the list of what they're worried about. And then you also have Southeast Asia is rolling out its own, and then that's also a very different culture around waste. And then yeah, South America. We also work in Africa. So we worked in South Africa specifically, and the goal there of circular economy is about waste, but it's more about people can't afford to buy this whole bottle of detergent, so we need to let them buy what they can afford and store in their home.
right.
So it's a
Yep.
very different lens. So
God, that is, yeah.
yeah, basically,
Um,
if you want to nerd out about the regulation, it has pretty interesting social
yeah.
effects.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
it's going to define us, I think, for the next 20 years in our relation to our
It's
waste.
our
And
future.
yes,
Yep.
it's our future. Yeah.
Yep.
Um, All right, well, we're going to close this out. I have a couple maybe more quicker response questions,
Okay.
and then we can, yes. I'd love to know, so 6 years into Reath, what has entrepreneurship taught you that conferences in this space didn't, or couldn't?
Okay. Uh, you know what? Honestly, part of me is like everyone should start their own business if they want to really learn about themselves, because I don't think anything tests you more, but also nothing is a better teacher. And in terms of the space, it's honestly just understanding that every company runs things so differently, but fundamentally they all have the same human issues. So just remembering that there's a human behind every process and
Hmm.
that the people that you're talking to in the space usually have really good intentions and you have to help them kind of get out of that jaded mindset because they've probably been beaten down over the length of their career. So just like bring the element of humanity. And I feel like conferences sometimes are just like, oh yeah, this is great. Look at everything that we did. I'm not going to tell you about how painful it was to get here. Yeah.
Love that. Um, is there anybody in mind, or is there any organization that you look toward in which you've gone, oh, I like this playbook, and essentially are sort of trying to adopt it or use it or sort of adjust yours accordingly?
We do regularly look at other industries. So,
Hmm.
particularly kind of other types of financial software or insurance have interesting
Absolutely.
correlations for us. And honestly, the open data standard also related back to, how banking changed over the course of my lifetime and how online banks are able to kind of overcome a lot of this regulation that people thought was impossible. So I look at other industries, particularly monetary ones, because they tend to have more oversight. And I try to look at the failings of healthcare systems, um, because I feel like they are ripe for learnings and also have that human element of like, it makes you really detail oriented. So I try to
Mm,
bring those lenses in. In terms of companies I love Etsy. I love how Etsy has set
mm.
itself up, how it has enabled people to bring in their own revenue stream, but also deliver a really good customer experience. And then I hope they pair up in the future. But in circular economy, I love all the reseller apps like Vinted in the UK is such a joyful thing to use. It's just they've done such a good job. So making it easier for people to reuse things and make money off of what they already have is pretty great.
I anything that brings magic into reuse of just that joy, that sort of, oh, I can't
It's
believe
so
I get this
easy.
or can look at it's so easy. Oh, it's that is the future. I'm so excited that we can continue to push
It's
that bound.
possible.
It's possible. It's possible. We're getting there. Um, what advice would you give to founders who want to profit from reducing waste? That is the hardest. This is the industry we're in.
Oh, I would say be patient. So a lot of our waste has valuable materials in it, and a lot of that requires scientific application and testing because we have established numbers about, how many precious metals we need to hit our different energy type goals, but we don't know where all of those are going to come from yet. And so I think just basically identifying your gap, but also being realistic that it's to make a lot of money, it is slow. And companies definitely can do it. There are great innovators in the concrete space that have made those great carbon sinks, and that took a decade to figure out. Um, so if you're in it for the money, no harm there. I think it can keep you motivated, but it's definitely slower. There are easier ways to make money.
Yes.
But it's very
Yes.
possible because we need that R&D to be able to fulfill our other sustainability goals in other industries like our automotive and our energy spaces.
So get in mental, emotional marathon shape. That is
Yeah, and
essentially you're
don't
going for the long, yeah.
yeah, exactly. Don't let yourself burn out. Don't let yourself get too excited or too depressed with the highs and the
Just
lows.
nice, even. Just keep
Try.
it
Yeah.
nice. Yes, exactly. Try. Well, excellent. Emily, thank you so much for the time. This was a joy. This flew
Thanks.
by.
This
So
was
thank
really
you.
fun.
Thanks. Yeah, I appreciate it. Yeah, thank you. All right. Well, I look forward to. We'll be following up in a year, and we can compare some notes again.
Yeah, that would be fun. We can see what has happened, and
What
hopefully
is
there will
yeah,
be
exactly.
public data about how much the bills actually cost companies. So
Oh, yes.
we'll see.
Just
Yeah,
we can nerd out. Yeah, excellent.
exactly.
Um, thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Gar. It was really nice to meet you.